Now, what we're looking at here, a painting by Thomas Blanchet. Blanchet was a 17th century Frenchman who studied at the French Academy. We're looking here at a plaza space in the Acropolis, or whatever the French or the Italians thought the Acropolis looked like in the 17th century. None of them would have probably have traveled to Athens, but it's a sort of imagined Acropolis space. But it's laid out with this very rigorous geometric perspective. I think just naturally comes out of my own sort of tastes and inclinations as an artist. And I should say, I guess, whether or not you know my work, I'm interested in structure, in geometric structure. And I thought that in my own mind, I'm torn between the kind of structure that's represented in the Blanchet painting here and the very different kind of pictorial structure of the screen downstairs. And I'll talk more about that when we go down there. It's an image from classical mythology depicting Mercury, also known as Hermes, and Herse. Herse was one of 3 daughters of King Octaeus, who was the Athenian king. And in Ovid's version of this, of Herse, Mercury spies Herse and falls in love with her, and they end up getting married. I guess what I've come up with are 3 questions that I'll try to work around. The first question that I have with this, and what's sort of odd in Blanchet's representation, is where is Herse among all the women here on the in this stage set? Which is she? Secondly, I ask where is Mercury, or where is Hermes? And by that I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And the third question is, where are we? How are we oriented within the perspective scheme of the picture? And I'm asking this, working back, as a way of trying to get to some kind of answer to the first question of where is Herse? And we're looking here at a representation of Renaissance one-point perspective, Albertian perspective. The space is determined, is laid out in relationship to the viewer's stance in relationship to the space. And from that, the notion of the eye level or the horizon appears. Actually, the eye level is the horizon or the sea, and there are silhouettes of sailboats and other masts of ships that pass by there. So our orientation, our relative height as we look at the picture is in relationship to that. So the eye level extends straight out from the picture, from the surface of the picture, to the stance of the viewer. So that's where we are. We know that our orientation is at this level here, and by which you would then know, you should know that if our eye level is up here, we're higher than any other person represented in the picture. We're looking down on these figures here. We're looking down on the figures farther back in space, and we're still looking down on the figures that are up on the porch of the temple. Because if their eye level was the same as ours, it would be at some kind of elevation where any of these figures here would be up with the same elevation as our own eye level. So the second question is, where is Mercury, or where is Hermes? Well, he's that little hummingbird figure floating up there in the sky, looking down on the sea of flowered maidens who are also bearing flowers. So that's, he's visible to us in a way that we weren't visible to ourselves looking at the picture. But the question more specifically about where he is, and again, this is getting to where Herse is within this scenario, is where is he in depth in the picture? If I could figure out where he is relative to the foreground figures or the middle ground figures or the background figures, where Herse might be. And I wasn't certain about that. I mean, sometimes gods are larger than mortal people, so maybe that wouldn't necessarily be a clear indicator. But he seems to be larger than, if he were standing, to be considerably larger than this group of women here, these maidens, and yet he seems smaller than the figures in the foreground. I think he's probably somewhere between here and here at this point. So then the next question is, where is Herse? It occurred to me to actually extend the vanishing point. And again, the vanishing point goes here, but if you extend that same diagonal up, it would then connect with Mercury. I thought, what if you were looking at this woman here, whose face we don't even see? You know, she's striding on, she's pretty prominently lit, she's carrying a basket of flowers on her head, which I don't think is necessarily proof of anything. But what if there was some kind of line a line that went through the vanishing point up to Mercury, and in fact, she falls within the target there. We can see her, but we don't see what he sees. You know, this is some enchanted evening situation here, where he's looking across this space, and he's found the one. And so that's why he's transfixed. And she's the one for him. She certainly looks like a plausible candidate from us, but maybe she has a beauty that only he can see. So that's where I'll leave what I have to say about the painting. And I encourage any comments or questions. Itsukushima on the left, which is a shrine near Hiroshima, and Waka, which on the right, a lesser-known shrine near Osaka. Gosh, there's so much for me to learn from this. That's just in terms of structure of space, the viewer's relationship to space. You know what a rich source. There are three structural devices that I think are interesting in this. One is the use of isometric projection, which is a kind of alternative perspective that one sees in Chinese and Japanese painting, but you also see it in architectural rendering, Western architectural rendering. And that is where structures, houses, and other geometric volumes are represented in where their bases are usually shown horizontally. They're front sides, so they're parallel to the bottom of the picture. And then depth is shown by projecting the volumes on diagonals, on parallel diagonals. And so if you look at the piers, the bridges, and the houses in these, that they all are aligned along a series of parallel diagonals. In other words, unlike the Renaissance perspective where buildings are represented, or floors, the geometry becomes smaller as it goes off to the vanishing point of the eye level. In these paintings, buildings don't diminish in size. Their volumes remain regular and understandable. The clouds aren't as agitated by this screen because clouds are sort of ambiguous as volumes anyway. You kind of like flow across the divide with them. But the geometry, the more geometric volumetric forms, the buildings, are sometimes confused by this. That you're looking at a plane going one way, and then suddenly it warps off into space. Although I think one wanders at will ultimately through both of these. This is one too that we enter from the right-hand side in an interesting way. But I don't think that's always the case with the screens. I know that Chinese and Japanese scrolls, landscape scrolls, are unrolled toward the left, and that you engage a certain part of it, 2 or 3 feet at a time, but you're always moving from the left to the right. But the non-bomb screens that were previously up it was a pair of screens like this, of a similar size. And the ships and the non-bomb screens were coming in from the left. And the merchants were unloading from the left. And then the city that they paraded through, and there was a parade of the merchants, they went toward the right. And it was contemporary with this screen too. And I don't think it was influenced by contact with Western painters at that time. Maybe it was. That gave them the idea of thinking right to left, but I don't think Western paintings at that time worked that way either. You know, maybe I'm stating the obvious, but I believe that the painting upstairs is as much of an artificial structure as this is, you know, as much a contrivance. And as I said at the beginning, I see myself operating somewhere between the two.